Hey guys, go ahead and get your packet out. We're going to go over concept 1180B, and we're talking about graphing and transforming a line. Let's start with the definition. What is a transformation? It's moving a function up or down, reflecting it, or changing it to stretch, or compress. So if you want to move your line up or down, you're going to change the y-intercept. So adding or subtracting from the y-intercept is going to move the graph up or down on the coordinate plane. If you are trying to make your graph steeper or flatter, you're going to need to change the slope of your line. And we're going to talk about what that looks like and how we can change that. Parent function below says y equals x. This is the original function. It's not always going to be y equals x, but whatever your original function is going to be called your parent function. I've switched over to Desmos now, and what I would like to show you is what a parent function looks like and how you change the steepness and what that looks like. So I've typed the parent function in here, y equals x, where your y-intercept is 0 and your slope is 1 over 1, and you can see the red line. That is what it looks like when you graph that. Now on your notes it says write a function that would be steeper than the parent function. So if we look at our notes, if we're trying to make something steeper, we will need to change the slope. So in order for me to make something steeper, I need to change the slope of my function. So I'm going to have y equals, my slope in my first function is 1, so I'm going to just make that steeper by saying 3x. Notice my y-intercept is still the same, but on the blue line, it's much steeper slope than my parent function. Then what would that look like if I was trying to make a function that is flatter? If you're trying to make a function that is flatter, your slope needs to be less than the parent function. So my parent function slope again is 1, so any fraction less than 1 would work. So I'm going to use y equals, and I'm going to put the slope as 2/3. So I'm going to write the fraction 2 over 3 x. And you can see by looking at that graph now that the slope of the green line is under the red line, making it flatter. Okay, so by changing the slope, you're changing how steep your line is. The steepness, you're making it steeper or you're making it flatter. Okay, look down at the next example. It says you've got the function y equals 3x minus 2. So I'm going to use Desmos and type in y equals 3x minus 2. And you'll notice that my y-intercept is -2 and my slope is 3 over 1. This graph does go by halves, so pay close attention to that. It asks you to write a function that would be 4 units up. If we go back up to the top under transformations, if we're trying to move an equation or a graph of a line up or down on our coordinate plane, we need to change the y-intercept. It is asking us to move our function up 4 units. So we would need to add 4 to our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is -2. So if I take -2 plus 4, my slope is going to stay the same. And instead of a -2, I would have a +2. Notice those lines are parallel. The slope does not change. It just shifts the line up 4 units. The last one asks to write a function that would be down 1 unit. So referring back to our original, or y equals 3x minus 2, the red line, If I am trying to move my line down, I will need to subtract 1 from my y-intercept. So I'm going to keep my slope the same, 3x. And if I take negative 2 minus 1, that gives me negative 3 or minus 3. So on the black line, you can see they've shifted it down 1 unit on the coordinate plane. Again, all of those are parallel. The slopes all stayed the same. Okay, turn the page and look at the functions y equals 2x plus 5 and y equals negative 2x plus 5. I'm going to type both of those equations into Desmos. Oops. Okay, so my y-intercept is 5. My slope is up 2, right 1. And when I enter the second equation, y equals negative 2x plus 5. The only thing that is different on those two equations is the slope. The y-intercept is the same. The slopes are opposite. Because the slopes are opposite, they will reflect one another. That means if you folded your paper in half on the y-axis, those two lines would match up. Okay, so if you're asked to reflect your line or your graph of your equation, it's asking you to find the opposite of your slope. Okay, let's look at the final discussion question. Compared to y equals 3x minus 1, describe how the graph of y equals 5x plus 2 has been transformed. So what I want you to compare first is the slopes. So I have a 3x and a 5x. It started at 3x and it transformed to 5x. So as I'm looking at that, the slope changed from 3 to 5. It increased. So because it increased, the slope became steeper. Okay. Now let's look at the y-intercept. The y-intercept was negative 1, and it changed to positive 2 over here. It went from negative 1 to positive 2. It shifted up 3 spaces on the graph. So as a reflection, I would say this line became steeper and shifted 3 spaces up on the y-intercept. We're done with notes for now, so make sure you talk to your teacher and do the essential teacher talk before moving on.